Rosie Wright has a career in developing tech with a focus on social movements. Today, she explains the ways VR can activate user engagement for positive social change and why it's a critical time to move this tech development towards broader societal goals.
Today, I want to talk to you about VR, or virtual reality, and the opportunities that I see it offering. I'm not the only person excited about these opportunities either. The UN have been experimenting with VR resources, most notably in 2015, creating a piece called Clouds Over Sidra in partnership with the filmmaker Chris Milk. It's set in the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan, and in it you meet 12-year-old Sidra, who is a refugee from Syria. And she shows you around the camp, tells you about the people and places that are important to her, and shares a little bit of her story. Milk has made his own talk about creating the piece, and what he had to say really resonated with my experiences of how VR creates more engagement and action. Because people were using a 360-degree headset to access the piece, they were choosing where to look and which parts of Sidra's story to engage with. And that translated into them wanting to take action, in this case, to make a donation. As a film, however, Clouds Over Sidra only just begins to touch on the possibilities VR offers us as an immersive art form. So we can understand immersion as the first of three key affordances to help us make sense of VR as a tool for social change. And affordance is a concept I find really useful in analysing all kinds of technology. Put simply, it's what that technology allows or encourages you to do based on its innate attributes or characteristics. So a pencil enables you to share certain kinds of messages by allowing you to write. And VR encourages you to make behavioural and therefore social change by allowing you to become an actor rather than a spectator of a social problem. Now, the second key affordance, I believe, is embodiment. In the examples I've given so far, the VR is still asking you to identify as yourself, whether you're visiting the refugee camp or cutting down a redwood. And that means you're coming from an external, compassionate viewpoint, that it makes you want to help somebody or something else. But VR also quite uniquely allows us to identify with another by quite literally letting us put ourselves in their shoes. Take, for example, the work of artist Lucy Bonner, and particularly her piece Compliment, which aimed to raise awareness about street harassment. Based on her own experiences living in New York, which rather sadly resonated with some of mine living in London, she aimed to show how violating the experience of being catcalled could really be, particularly for those who might otherwise dismiss it as a compliment. Now, these were often individuals who felt physically dominant in their day-to-day lives, and so the VR worked to disrupt this feeling. As the recipient of the catcalling, your perspective is set rather low, and that allows the other characters to really loom in and invade your screen, creating that palpable sense of threat and intimidation. That's not a perspective everyone would have been able to imagine, but having had it materialised for them, they're therefore able to access the experience and the feelings it provokes, and perhaps use this as a basis for behavioural change. Therefore, it's no surprise that there's a small but growing trend of charities and campaign organisations creating embodiment-based VR. Or perhaps an animal welfare campaigning group letting us see through the eyes of a cow in a slaughterhouse. I don't believe any technology by itself is going to help us solve any of our social problems, but I do believe they can be part of the solution if we use them correctly. In order to do that, we need to understand how each of their affordances could cause harm if used in the wrong way. I've taken a particular interest in how it's being used in mental health, that by allowing us to transcend boundaries, VR also allows us to violate spaces. The process of oppressing any group often involves occupying and rewriting their lived experience. And there's any number of overly negative and inaccurate portrayals of mental ill health, frequently written by people that just don't have the experience to know. I'd be horrified to see any of those becoming the basis for a voyeuristic VR experience. So we need to start by ensuring that VR users are invited in rather than trespassing. And that means making sure resources are made by, or at the very least with, people that have the legitimacy and the experience to really share a perspective on an issue. Unfortunately, by being marginalised, such groups are often on the wrong side of the digital divide. So to tackle that challenge, we need to be talking about access rights and disenfranchisement. There's also the fact that even amongst people with lived experience, there's rarely just one viewpoint on an issue. For all its sense of immediacy and presence, we have to remind ourselves that VR is scripted and created with an agenda. So we need to be asking questions and making sure that that doesn't replace conversation, or in fact, disagreement. Often, research into social impact has looked at small or short-term behavioural changes amongst new or inexperienced users. We need to be doing a lot more research to understand how VR affects our emotions long-term so that we don't oversaturate. And I think now is a critical time to be asking those questions. And I don't think that VR is going to be overlooked for that much longer. Go out there and experiment with using it anywhere you can find it. Ask those questions about access and about agendas, and make sure that you're holding people to account. If you have an important perspective to share, experiment with what you can create. Or if not, make sure that you're supporting other creators. Because above all, the answer to how VR will create social change is it depends on how it's used by people like you.